Just a disclaimer, if I have eyes low, you know why. Hey y'all, it's Kendall, aka Kendollars.
It's the consistency for me.
I've just felt like a new gust of motivation. I realize that like what my subbies, what my followers want for me is more transparency and just more openness. In today's day and age, I think we see enough smoke and mirrors that it's just kind of refreshing for people when somebody is candid and open and honest. In today's video, I'm just gonna be sharing with you guys a little bit about my experience in Toronto. And for those of you who are new here or don't already know, I was born and raised on Vancouver Island in British Columbia, which is on the west coast of Canada. About 4 years ago, I decided to up and move to Toronto. Prior to moving to Toronto, I legit didn't know anybody there, so I just kind of took a shot in the dark. And because of that, I ended up in some very interesting situations. That is a really rough city, and if you're not strong-minded, it will literally eat you up. I just kind of wanted to open up and share with you guys a little bit about my experience in Toronto and just up and moving across the country. As per usual, just sharing some of the lessons that I learned along the way. If you guys are new here, make sure to smash that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up if you want some more of these more personal kiki videos, and if you're feeling today's look, which I totally am. Oh, I don't even know what this look is to be called.
All I know is I'm feeling it.
So yeah, if you guys like videos like this, make sure to give this video a huge thumbs up, and without any further ado, let's just get right into the video. So I guess I should start with why I decided to move to Toronto, and it's kind of complex, but coming from Vancouver Island, I grew up in a mainly white city, in a mainly white neighborhood. It's definitely a retirement town. Growing up, I just felt mistreated, misplaced, misunderstood. I knew from the time I was like 15 that Victoria wasn't it for a girl like me. I always had bigger dreams. At the ripe age of 18, I actually did end up moving over to Vancouver. I packed all of my little hopped on a ferry boat and came to Vancouver and started my life out. It wasn't long before I realized that Vancouver is just a whole lot more of what's going on the island. It's definitely not as poppin' or as fun or as cultured, if you ask me, as Toronto. We have a huge population of Asian people here and Indian people and of course Indigenous people, so it's definitely a diverse city, but I just feel like there's something lacking in the culture department. I'm all about the culture. I am for the culture. I just always felt like my personality was a little bit big for the city. I always feel like I'm taken wrong or misunderstood, or my loudness is taken for aggressiveness. This is just how I talk, y'all. People will be like,
Calm down.
people are forever telling me to calm down, and it's like, yo, I'm calm. Like, I just smoked a half ounce today.
I'm center. I'm serene.
Don't tell me to calm down. You calm down. I always kind of felt like a disconnect, and especially being a woman of color, there's not a lot of black people of color in Vancouver. I believe it's actually only like 1 to 2%. And it's very hard to like find your niche and meet people who are similar. So in my mind, the only thing there was to do was pack up and roll out and go to the east where there's actually some niggas, you know? I lived in Vancouver for a couple years, but I realized even though it's bigger, it still ain't big enough. Prior to being 19 years old, I never had my dad in my life. I never met my American side of the family, and it wasn't until I was 19 that I actually flew out to Pittsburgh and like got reunited with my black side, and I feel like I really found myself and came into my own. And I feel like it was a huge wake-up call for me. My entire life, there was something missing. I felt like a piece of me was missing. That was my family, that was my culture, that was my blackness. Growing up, I was taught that my blackness wasn't beautiful. I was made fun of for my curly hair. Even my personality, I always felt like I was misunderstood and constantly construed as angry or loud or ghetto. I was just sick of the shits, okay? Even though I am mixed, I definitely do identify more with my black and my indigenous heritage. I just was never considered white by my white counterparts. They always looked at me, they saw the color of my skin, and I was always the black girl. So I always identified with being black.
Yeah.
After going east and meeting my dad and getting in touch with my family, I decided that east is where I wanted to be. I hadn't even started my dual citizenship citizenship application at that point. I decided that I was just gonna move to Toronto because at the end of the day, it's so close to New York, which is one of my favorite cities in the world. It's
thebomb.com.
I was like, you know what? Toronto is like the bootleg New York. I heard there's black people there. Shit's not working out for me in Vancouver, so let me just see how that goes for me. A lot of people thought I was crazy going to a city where I didn't know anybody. I literally had not one connection and I was just out there
Fending for myself.
After deciding I wanted to relocate, I literally just got on Kijiji and started looking for places and calling around. I was visiting my dad and I decided I didn't want to come back to Vancouver. So I had my mom go into the place that I had rented out in Vancouver, pack up all my shit, send me my clothes in Toronto, and I was out. Like, when I'm not happy in a situation, I don't stay and I dwell. I just keep it pushing. At this point in my life, I was like 20 years old and I felt like Toronto was the answer. So I started calling around places on Kijiji and I ended up getting a hold of this guy. On the ad, it said that the place was downtown Toronto. Shortly after arriving, I realized it was actually in North York. I found myself living at Lawrence Square, which is the hood. If you know anything about jungle, I don't know how a girl like me found herself in jungle. The second I arrived at Dufferin and Lawrence, I realized I was not in Kansas anymore. I've never been catcalled in my life in Vancouver. Never, not once. There was never a time where a guy like pulled over his car and started hollering at me. Like, I never had that experience. So in my head, I'm thinking that I'm ugly.
Even though I was a badass bitch.
Let me tell you, the day I got to Toronto, these niggas had jungle fever. There was guys literally doing a complete illegal U-turn to pull up and talk to me. It was a complete flip-flop compared to what I was used to. That's one thing I will say about Toronto is it can really get to your ego, because I went from not having any guys give me no time of day, pay me no mind, because a lot of the guys in Vancouver would be intimidated by a girl like me. Now, out of nowhere, out of the blue, I'm getting catcalled every day. I ended up calling around on Kijiji while I was in Pittsburgh, and I ended up getting through with this landlord. He claimed that his place was downtown. It was actually 25 minutes out of downtown in the ghetto, but at least I was no longer in BC. Like $7 a month just to rent a room. And when I showed up to the place, there was like various other girls living there, and it was a super weird living situation, you guys, because the landlord would like show up out of the blue every day, and I'm a private person. Like, I don't want a landlord up in my business. Like, what the he would just show up to the property and like let himself into the house, and it's a girl's rooming house. Like, the landlord had no business being there. He had a literal puppy mill in the freaking garage of the place, so he would come there every day and like take care of the dogs, I guess, and kind of check up on the property. But it was super weird because like I'd be in the shower and I'd get out of the shower like wrapped in my towel, and he'd just be walking around the place, and it was an all-girls place, and this landlord, like, it was super sketch. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more weird, my roommate ended up sending me this news article, and it was a picture of my landlord literally on camera throwing out puppies in the garbage can at Lawrence Square. I knew that this was facts, that this was actually the truth, because I had a puppy mill going on in my basement. It was dead ass my landlord, and I guess he ended up getting like open court cases and shit, and I was like, where the hell am I living? My landlord is a puppy killer. I'm living with like 5 random girls. 2 of them were underage. One of the girls that lived there, she was already for the streets, and she was only 16 years old. She was already talking to me about her BBL, about wanting to become a stripper, and it was at this moment that I realized I'm not in Vancouver anymore. The girls out in Toronto, I swear to you, they are on some other shit. That's just the culture there. Like, people aren't really thinking about their reputation, and they aren't worried about what other people think of them. They're just trying to get to the bag, and at the end of the day, like, I kind of grew to respect that, because coming from a small town like Victoria, I was so concerned about my reputation and what people thought of me. I wasn't even living in my truth. Believe me when I tell you, people only love you as much as they can use you in Toronto. A lot of the times it's very hard to differentiate from a business relationship to an actual friendship. And now that I've been out of Toronto for almost a year, I can honestly say there's very few people from Toronto and from my time in Toronto that I would actually consider lifelong friends, although I do have a few, and I did meet a lot of amazing people and make a lot of connections. Now that I've kind of withdrawn from the situation and been able to analyze things, a lot of the people that I was hanging around with were just people that I hung around with to pass time, because I literally had nothing better to do. Anyways, after moving to Toronto and like ending up in Lawrence with the crazy landlord, I realized I don't even want to live with a puppy killer. I don't want to live with these minors. In Vancouver and Toronto, rent is extremely extremely high, especially if you're living in the city. The whole time I lived in Toronto, pretty much I lived in shared accommodations because A, like I didn't have furniture, so like I needed a furnished place, and B, I didn't know enough about Toronto to fully commit to like furnishing a place and actually settling down there. Thank God I took that route because I would have wasted a whole lot of money had I have gotten myself a condo, furnished it entirely. I don't even live there now. I ended up finding this place, kind of midtown Toronto, Dufferin and Bloor area. It was so much closer to downtown. It was near the mall. It was near the beauty supply store, walking distance to everything that I needed, and I didn't have a car there. My ass was in Uber or on the TTC. That's just where I was at the time. I ended up getting this like rooming house and lying and saying that I was a student, even though we all know damn well I had nothing going for me when I moved to Toronto, and I sure as hell was not going to school. When I first arrived, I didn't even know which way was up, but I lied my way into this place, and it was literally a house full of Korean students, you guys, and they exiled me like heavy. I literally moved 4 different times in the span of like 4 months when I first moved to Toronto. Every time I moved, I was getting closer and closer to downtown because I'm a city girl. That's just how I live.
Duh.
I spent the remainder of my time in Toronto living in Chinatown. The most filthy thing. There's mice, there's bed bugs, there's cockroaches. It's literally nasty. So after I decided to leave Little Korea, I moved into this little like self-contained unit in Chinatown. It was so dingy and gross, but I was like, at least I'm on my own and the rent is reasonable and it's close to downtown. One thing I'll tell you about Toronto, y'all, is you get what you motherfucking pay for. There is no such thing as a bargain, a steal, or a deal when it comes to rent. This self-contained unit I moved into, like 2 days after moving in, I started getting welts all over my body, and I was like,
Wait, what the fuck?
what the hell is going on? It wasn't long before I realized that the place was literally infested with bed bugs. I remember standing up out of my bed after feeling a huge pinch on my arm. I literally saw the bed bugs running on my fucking bedding, you guys. And this was after 2 nights of being there. There was nights where I literally slept inside the McDonald's on Queen and Spadina, which is actually where I got robbed for the fake Gucci bag. It just wasn't it, you guys. It was so bad. I ended up meeting this little Rasta guy from Kensington Market, and he used to sell me weed, and I told him about my situation with the bed bugs, and he was nice enough to let me stay with him for 2 weeks while I looked for another place. This was before my Vixen, before bottle service, before the strip clubs, and before all of that. I was working at a regular, degular, schmegular restaurant, so to be dealing with bed bugs, moving time and time again, all the shit that I was dealing with, all while dealing with my first real Canadian winter. I remember sleeping in McDonald's and it's like negative 15, 20 degrees, you guys. Like I didn't even have a proper winter jacket. I didn't have money to get a proper winter jacket, because something that I'll tell you about Toronto is when you move from place to place, it's not like Vancouver where you only have to pay first month's rent plus half a month's rent as deposit. In Toronto, you're paying first and last. So every time you move, you're literally paying 2 months worth of rent, and it's just like over the top. It was super messed up because I only lived there for 2 days, found out there was bed bugs. I never went back. So I ended up staying with like this little Rasta guy before I ended up getting into my place, which was in Kensington Market.
$10 in Kensington.
Even if you've never been to Toronto and you end up going to Toronto,
Go to the market.
so cultured, so many amazing vintage stores, so many food places, just so much. I legit miss Rasta pasta. I miss peanut punch. I miss being able to get all my spices and shit bulk. Kensington was that place, and I ended up living in this house which actually was like breaking down from the outside. When I used to have niggas drop me off there, I'd be like, it was super embarrassing. It was like the most ghetto house from the outside. Inside, I was able to fix like my little room up kind of nice, but overall it was a shared accommodation with a bunch of like old men, and it was weird. I'll tell you right now that the living quality in Vancouver is a hell of a lot better than the living quality in Toronto. People will be living the dingiest lives but still be out here like flexing Fendi and shit. Everyone's living a facade. Everyone's trying to out baddie the next bitch, out booty the next bitch. It's to the point where surgery is a status thing. If you have your boobs done or your ass done or whatever the hell done, that puts you in a different caliber. I just feel like people value different things. Here it's very plain Jane. Don't nobody care how they look. Everyone wears all black, Patagonia, Lululemon, and like windbreakers. So when you go to Toronto, it's all about the glitz and the glam and the flex, and it's just like a lot. It's overwhelming. Super easy to get lost in the abyss and distracted. I definitely think the things people care about and value in Toronto are a lot more shallow. I feel like people here are a lot more at peace with themselves. I feel like they're a lot more down to earth almost. Even though I'm a glamazon, I'm still out here with my freaking stones and my soap rocks and my incense. I'm a big ass plant mom. I'm constantly hiking at the beach.
I'm a hippie.
For those of you who don't know, the majority of the time that I was living in Toronto, I was a video vixen and a bottle service girl, and I was just kind of like caught up in that life. And if you know anything about being a video vixen, just the circles that you run in, it's just a lot of tomfoolery. And some of my really good friends and connections from Toronto today were from doing music videos, but a lot of the connections that I made were just a hot ass mess. You're running in the same circles of a lot of pimps, a lot of sex workers, whether that be strippers, escorts, and the rest. That is a very fast life, and at this time of my life, I was making the most fast money I've ever made. I was doing bottle service, doing music videos 3 to 4 times a week. I was able to get my boobs done, stack my money. I was able to achieve things and travel to places I never thought that I would go. I would always be running in the same circles. Famous people, rappers. I've met Drake, 2 Chainz, Tory Lanez, Ray Sremmer. Coming to Toronto, I was actually a pretty conservative girl. Like, I was very modest. I cared a lot what people thought about me. I wasn't taking my clothes off for photos. Like, the mentality there, it will change you. I realized that the more clothes that came off, the more money there was to be made. I was a bottle service girl, a video vixen, and I even did some serving at the strip club, which a lot of you guys want to hear about my strip club experience. I have experience at both ends. I've actually served and done waitressing in the strip club, bartending in the strip club, and dance in the strip club as well. So I definitely want to open up more about that and be totally candid with it. I'm not trying to hide anything. Every decision that I've made, everything that I've done has molded me into the girl that I am today, and I don't regret any of it. Going into Toronto, I was very judgmental. Just the idea of any type of sex work, whether that be stripping, video vixen, like modeling with your clothes off, Instagram model, like I thought that was so faux pas. I hate the person I used to be because I would like side eye these girls, and for what? Being a fucking hater never made me $1. Being a hater never got me ahead in my life. And honestly, some of the people that I've met in the stripping industry have been some of the most rock solid I've ever met in my entire life. I think I needed Toronto to change my perspective and help me to become a less judgmental person. Before going to Toronto, I thought it was rainbows and butterflies. I was living in a fantasy world where I felt like life should be a fairy tale. I got exposed to the raw and the real in Toronto, and I needed that. I'm so glad that I got out of the bubble of just BC and Vancouver. Life has come around in full circle now, and I'm back in Vancouver living my best life. Before, I feel like I was living a watered down existence almost. I just cared so much about what people thought of me, just trying to prove myself to people who, like, at the end of the day, they're not packing what I'm packing. Like, why am I trying to prove myself to somebody who isn't even... I definitely think living in Toronto did open my horizons, and being on my own completely. Like, I didn't have family or friends there, so the only person I had to rely on was myself, and I still fucking found a way. I got to go to Europe, travel through the States. I got to travel in circles that I would never have gotten to travel in otherwise, and I've made a lot of connections and built my network to something that I couldn't have dreamed of had I not have stepped out of my comfort zones and taken the plunge and just gone with it, you know? The people that I dated, the people that I dealt with, like the friends that I entertained, it just wasn't in alignment. I found myself a lot of times in Toronto just lost and hanging out with like the lowest common denominator and just not having a lot of self-respect and just kind of going with the flow, you know, because it wasn't my city and I wasn't gonna go there and like judge the way these people were living in their own city, you know. You gotta get with it. My morals and my values never went out the window. Of course, everyone makes mistakes and does things that they're not proud of. I'm not a sellout. I never sold my soul and I never sold myself short. I always say what didn't kill me made me stronger, and Toronto definitely seasoned me for the rest of my life. Even with all these like trials and tribulations, I never gave up on my vision, and I kind of like stuck it out for better or for worse. After dealing with X number of toxic men, a bunch of toxic people and toxic friends, and just realizing how naive I was thinking that these people were for me. I didn't know these people from a hole in the ground. These people didn't owe me anything, and a lot of the time I felt like I was blindsided by people. I accumulated a lot of trust issues from my time in Toronto, and I just like don't look at the world the same. I'm not about to follow anybody blind or just trust for no damn reason. The positive side of that is I'm definitely more aware of my surroundings. I have nothing but love for Toronto at the end of the day. I wouldn't be the girl you see in front of you right now if it wasn't for that city. Part of me just wishes I knew then what I know now. I'm a lot more mature than I was going into things. I'm a lot less naive, and I think I would have conducted myself differently had I have known what I know now. But at the end of the day, it was all a growing and learning experience, and I'm just grateful for all of the amazing connections that I did make in Toronto, and just a lot of the things that I've learned about myself and about life in general, and just the experience in general. I definitely want to delve so much further into all of the things that I talked about, but I just don't feel like I have time in this video today. I hope that you guys all enjoyed this. It felt good to get that off my chest, to kind of open up to you guys. I realize this is my space to be me and just be open about the person that I am. This is a place of no judgment, and I love that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in the next motherfucking video.